If you think about the last time you went to the hospital, I guarantee you walked in, you probably you answered the same questions 8 times before you actually spoke to a doctor, and there's just no reason for that. There's just no reason for that. We shouldn't have that challenge when I can walk into a hotel room and have my all of my preferences on the television when I walk in the room. So there's something amiss in there, and that to me speaks to enormous opportunity for us to change healthcare in a big way, and improve quality of life and quality of experience for patients.
Welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT. My name is Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's Chief Futurist, also known as Mr. IoT. Today my guest is Kerry Sims, the Vice President of Hitachi Consulting for IoT and Analytics. Yeah. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, well, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to start by saying when people hear Hitachi Consulting and Deloitte Consulting, they're going to ask us, are we competing? And I actually think we're complementing each other in many ways. Do you agree with that?
I do, actually. As we were chatting earlier today, my read on it is that there's enough space for everybody to play, and there's so much digital transformation that's taking place that everybody needs to find a way to work together, and there's lots of complementary capabilities there.
I'm looking forward just to chatting with you about some of the projects we do and what's going on out there. Yep. And I'd love to talk about this. One of the things I find interesting is use cases.
Yep.
What use cases do you find sort of like really interesting today, and particularly from a point of view that you wouldn't have expected those use cases to be big?
It's a great question. I find that there's so many that are obvious in respect of reducing cost, improving productivity, and that is always sort of top of mind for every client. But the ones that have really surprised me and that I find very compelling around improving experience for the customer, and not just your traditional customer, but even business to business and the interaction. And I think the ones that are most compelling are coming out in the healthcare space and around human safety and improving the quality of life. And some of those that speak to me most tangibly are about having a digital experience end to end when you interact with your healthcare provider. If you think about the last time you went to the hospital, I guarantee you walked in, you probably answered the same questions 8 times before you actually spoke to a doctor, and there's just no reason for that. There's just no reason for that. We shouldn't have that challenge when I can walk into a hotel room and have my all of my preferences on the television when I walk in the room. So there's something amiss in there, and that to me speaks to enormous opportunity for us to change healthcare in a big way, and improve quality of life and quality of experience for patients.
It's so interesting to me that you talk about healthcare, because for me, I work a lot in Smart Factory. We talk about predictive or preventive maintenance.
Yep.
And so we do all this machine learning, artificial intelligence, for machines. And yet I want predictive health. I want preventive health, right?
Yes.
Sort of like my dream is that there is somewhere a way for me to actually really know what my food intake does at this point in time, rather than sort of like this delayed thing. By the time 3 months are gone, I'm stepping on the scale and I'm like, oh my God. But I mean, there's so much about predictive and preventive maintenance. What about health?
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the most tangible example to me is that the market is demanding that we get better at this, and it manifests itself through wearable technology. I mean, the consumer wearable market has exploded in recent years, And part of the reason is that people want to take that control into their own hands. They're not getting that experience from their healthcare provider. They're not getting well care. They're getting health care. And
well care, that's a really great word.
Yeah, to me, that's what it's all about. And frankly, that sort of transcends back to the conversation about the manufacturing space as well. I mean, when you look at manufacturing, to me, it's about the human factor, and how do you enable better productivity, with greater safety, and and take people out of sort of the repetitive roles and into something that is more value added. So I think automation is a space that we see tremendous growth in. Automation can be a scary thing, but it can also be a tremendous opportunity for us to elevate the creativity of people, and give them an opportunity to create new things.
What was interesting to me when you talked about healthcare and wearables, what I keep hearing is, well, step count isn't good enough. Your heart rate that's measured isn't accurate enough. And so what goes through my mind is, what is good enough? And so I'm curious if you have an opinion, a thought on that for healthcare, but really where I was going to go with this after that is not just healthcare. Yeah. You in Hitachi, you have a deep, deep, deep OT background, right? I think of trains, I think of many things you do. What sensors are good enough for data to make IoT decisions? Are we at the point where they're really cheap enough and good enough?
It's very use case dependent. So I think that the short answer is there's a lot of good enough out there, but there's always room for improvement. And we come from a culture of Kaizen, continuous improvement. And so, the expectation is that we're always looking for that next best thing. That said, there's clearly a business case, for different types of sensors and the different kinds of kind of analysis that you want to do. And at some point, if you don't know what the value proposition is to go to the next level, you pause and you stay, at that point until that business case becomes apparent. Personally on the healthcare front, I think, that point is when we are, preserving lives, making them, of better quality and longevity, and of better quality for a longer portion of that longevity. So, it's if we can do that, to me, that's tremendous value. In the case of manufacturing, where we spend a lot of our energy, it's about also seeing that kind of improvement where we can drive more value out of an operation.
Sensors.
Are
there sensors that you're surprised by? Are there sensors that coming back, or new sensors? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that there's any that I'm surprised by. I'm surprised by some of the ingenuity that's out there. One of the things
give me examples. What are you thinking of?
So one of the things I've been working with recently is vibration sensors that attach by magnets. And the fascinating thing about this is you don't have to spend a ridiculous amount of money to go do instrumentation in a factory or on a machine. You can do something relatively quickly. Deploying these magnetic sensors that have vibration, temperature, and you can use that information to start driving some real value in understanding what's happening before you make a commitment to some permanent fixture. And to me, that's a real revolution, just to have that kind of portability. And in fact, we find some clients that have been able to use that approach to move sensors around and optimize in one physical location and then move to the next spot, right? And not have a permanent deployment, but take an incremental approach. So
My nickname for those magnetic sensors is the lick and stick.
Yeah.
You just
That's great.
And National Instruments, when we did some work with, they didn't like that term. They thought it was a little loose, but I get it.
Yeah.
So no, but I'm with you that there's a lot of interesting things. The things I was wondering is the things that surprised me were particularly sound.
Yes.
But even more video. I know you gave an example today in our luncheon about some video analytics. Do you mind sharing that again? It was such a great example. I thought.
Absolutely. Now, I guess it's been it's fun to watch, but I think I might be desensitized to the to the ingenuity of it because I've seen so much of it. But when you think about for the lay listener, a viewer out there. We often have experienced some of the capability of watching an athlete that's filming shots for a video game, right? You can see the lines that connect to their arms and the physicality of that movement being represented as an avatar on a screen. And the ability to take that technology and apply it in real time to monitoring the physical movement of an individual on a manufacturing floor, and be able to determine, one, are they working within a safety envelope, or two, if they're doing something that might actually impact the quality of the operation or the quality of the output. These are really fascinating examples and draw real value. The other aspect, I was just speaking with the chief medical officer a couple of weeks ago about, the application of lidar in the clinical setting, because, we have such a concern over privacy. You don't have to worry about, if you use lidar as an alternative to video, the patient can opt into video or not. But if you still need that safety analytics, you can apply lidar, and the hypersensitivity of it is incredible.
So I'm sure many people know, but what's lidar?
It is a laser distance and ranging. Laser interferometer distance and ranging, I believe, is the.
Wow, I was thinking you're gonna just tell us that it's sort of like a radar, but it's not.
It's not. It's like a radar, but it's laser.
It's laser based, yeah.
It's a laser. Like radar. Essentially, it's distance and ranging applied with a light wave rather than a radio wave. So, I can, in fact, it's the same technology a lot of the autonomous vehicles use.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That Google uses for mapping. When you see the Google car go down the street, that's part of what's going on up there on the rooftop.
Yeah. So you said that video is used to analyze people on a shop floor. If I remember right, the example you used was that accentuators for some equipment, car equipment, turned out to be broken because it just dropped off and someone just decided, oops, picked it up and put it up there. And you couldn't tell from the outside that the accentuator was broken.
Right.
But once it went in the car, something didn't work and that caused problems. And that's what the cause was. Fascinating example to me. So you put video on that and you could therefore stop that from happening again.
Absolutely. And the other case in point is around safety. So when you have these robots, they're moving very fast. I mean, I don't know if you've been on the shop floor of like an auto manufacturer, but
not for a car manufacturer.
It can be, Elon Musk refers to the alien dreadnought in the Tesla factory. I have witnessed the alien dreadnought, and it is scary. These are, very heavy robots with plasma cutters, and they are moving fast. And if you got in the way, you would be toast. So, I can see that scenario being, a situation where, these machines are, frequently, taking up a tremendous amount of space because they have safety zones around them with chain link fence and, protective barriers to prevent people from getting close. But, even with all that, there's still a need in some cases for the human to get close to the machine in order to move sheet metal into position or to, collect a part. And so there's still a really important need for visualizing that safety and enabling a reaction time that's beyond what a human could do. And the computer can do that. It can recognize that, hey, this person is in danger, and shut off, and it can do it in microseconds. So I mean that is the kind of activity that we're looking at as applications.
Have you seen the sensor that senses when a human part comes in contact with a circular saw and shuts the circular saw off?
Oh my gosh, that's
it's fascinating. I've seen it. It works, and people show it
I
off.
hope it's before it comes in contact.
Yes, it's before it comes in contact. It's
oh my gosh.
the table saws. Really fascinating. Many people start projects, and I'm curious. I always say, think big, start small, scale fast. That's sort of my moniker around that.
Yeah.
How do you recommend to people to start on this endeavor?
Yes. So I run into the same question frequently, and it's different for every situation, really, for every client. Some are different parts on their journey, and they're facing different competitive pressures. And so what I see happening frequently is where we see the most value is, let's pick something very tangible that has a immediate, return on investment for the business. Let's focus in on proving the value that can be achieved there, and do that for as low cost as we possibly can. This is experimentation in some respects, but it's not experimentation about whether something can be done. It's really, at this point, the technology is there. The experimentation now is about whether something can be done at a price point that works and drives the return on investment for the business.
And then scales.
Yeah, and then scales.
That or a lower price point, yeah.
Absolutely. And as an example, I think we talked a little bit about fleet management technology today, and I've worked on one that we've now scaled to close to 300,000 vehicles, and 6,000 technicians across the United States, using the technology on a daily basis. That journey started with a proof of concept that said, could we even do something of this scale? And then step two, yes, we can do it. Technologically, it's possible. Then it's, okay, can we do it at the right price point? And that became the proof of value, and it was smaller scale. And then it became, okay, how do we how do we carry this up to an enterprise scale and nationwide, and do it rapidly? And that exercise, really at the end of it, the scaling up, once you've architected everything and you've got the process figured out and you've built your algorithms, the scaling up is very rapid. I mean, in the order of weeks. So
I have a big idea.
Yeah.
I start small.
Yes.
And now I scale. What are some of the scaling pitfalls, would you say?
One of the things that I keep running into is everybody wants to take advantage of the power of cloud, right? So I want elastic compute, I want elastic storage, I want all of the machine learning capabilities that are native to TensorFlow and SageMaker and Azure, and so I want to pull all those capabilities in. One of the things that you don't want to do is start pushing all your data to the cloud. As soon as you do that, the dollar signs start racking up, and your cloud salesperson is going to be happy to see that. But the reality is that there is a need to do cloud optimization, and that's about knowing where when the right time is to push to that scale, and when you need to do something in house. And sometimes that is variable. And driven by the urgency or the business case. Sometimes urgency outweighs the business case, but other times it's the other way around. So I think you have to balance that, and we spend a tremendous amount of time sort of engineering what's the right mix of on cloud, on-premise versus cloud, or multi-cloud.
So it's like edge computing is there not just for fast response, but it's also there to take some of that unnecessary data or clean up the data, do some sort of correlation before you send it all to the cloud and then have everything up there.
Absolutely. Rarely push raw data to the cloud. It's just too much.
Yeah, and then you have bandwidth issues too. You got to pay for the bandwidth going up there. Depending on where you are, that can cost a lot of money too.
Yeah. So. For experimentation purposes, absolutely. But for long term, we're definitely looking at doing as much as we can at the edge, and then storing in the cloud for really kind of strategic analysis.
You mentioned TensorFlow. Have you done video work with TensorFlow edge processing yet?
Yeah, we've got a couple of teams that are working with TensorFlow pretty intensely, and we actually are just about, if not have just completed our machine learning certification or recognition with Google. But we're partnering really closely with them on some machine learning aspects, but also with SageMaker, in AWS. Really the machine learning aspects, frankly, we do a lot starting with raw math, because in our view of the world is that a lot of these problems start with physics. So if we can figure out what the problem set is in math, and sometimes that starts with a paper and pencil, we figure it out there. Now we can go to R and Python. That's a low cost, lightweight way to do your analytics and prove out that something is viable, and then move to the cloud when you know what you're aiming to achieve and you've got a fact base to build on.
I want to close with a question, which is you have a new business model that you offer for certain problems, and the example you used earlier today was around railroads.
Yep.
Where Hitachi's big into railroads and rail cars and all that good stuff. And instead of just maintaining the car, you took on actual reliability as a metric. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because it really shifts, from my point of view, the opportunity for companies that have this problem to say, well, I actually have a partner that actually is as much on the hook as I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we were after. So it's a real mind shift, and also a differentiator, I think, especially when you look at large infrastructure type projects. We've sort of been on this track for a while. We've changed our approach and to market, in that we really look at it as market in instead of product out. And so if you kind of look back at the history of what's happened with Hitachi, historically we're massive manufacturing company, and a lot of innovation in Japan and then product out to rest of world. What we found is that driving innovation at a pace that is more viable for our end customer requires us to be much closer to them. So to that end, we created the Center for Social Innovation, which is out in Santa Clara, California. And we have a whole R&D based team there that is focused on working with the customer. And so my team does a lot of work with them directly, bringing them into relationships with our customers so that we can co-create together. And the next step in that process, really, beyond the actual co-creation of a solution that meets the customer's needs, is how do you build that? How do you capitalize it? How do we gain share in that model? And so that's where we start to draw upon Hitachi Capital and look at new business models that are really driven by outcomes and value.
Can you tell us about the particular railroad one?
Yeah, actually, it's very public. In fact, if anybody wants to look up, just Hitachi Rail UK, You can Google that. You'll find plenty of information out there. But the short story is that Hitachi Rail has entered into an agreement with UK government whereby we service and operate the trains, and every train has about 3,000 sensors on it. We analyze that data continuously. We're actually capturing that data in real time and analyzing it throughout the day, and we use that to drive predictive maintenance. So when there's a repair required, we often know about it well in advance, so that when the train is actually in its normal repair window, we address that repair at that moment.
Every time I meet someone like you, I get fascinated as yet another example of not knowing where IoT is all there. My theory is we're going to stop calling it the Internet of Things sometime soon, and we're just going to go back to calling it the Internet. But
it's fascinating. It's internet everywhere.
Internet everywhere, yeah. So, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for being a guest on my show. And with that,
it was an honor. Thank you.
It's great. And with that, another coffee chat is coming to an end. Thank you for watching. If you missed any of today's show or want to see any past shows, please check out our playlist. And I'll see you next week.